I never expected to see that name again. But there it was, printed in clean Times New Roman on the resume in front of me. Derek Harmon. My stomach dropped as 15-year-old memories crashed back like a tidal wave. Derek Harmon. The guy who made my high school years a living nightmare. The one who invented the nickname Garbage Gary because my dad worked in waste management. The one who once dumped my backpack into a toilet and filmed it while his friends laughed. The one who pushed me down a flight of stairs, resulting in a broken wrist that still aches when it rains. I'm the hiring manager at Vertex Solutions now, a mid-sized tech company that's been growing rapidly. I've been with the company for 8 years, working my way up from junior developer to head of engineering. We're hiring for several positions, and this particular application was for a senior project manager role. I stared at his resume, my hands slightly trembling. Derek's qualifications were actually quite impressive. MBA from a good school, certifications in project management, and a solid work history with progressively increasing responsibilities. On paper, he was exactly what we were looking for. You okay, Gary? My assistant Priya looked at me with concern. You've been staring at that resume for 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm fine, I lied, forcing a smile. Just thought I recognized a name. My first instinct was to throw his application in the trash. I had the power now. I could delete his application with a single click and he'd never know. A small part of me savored the thought of revenge, letting him come in for an interview and then humiliating him somehow, making him feel small, the way he'd made me feel for years. That night, I barely slept. I told my wife May about the situation over dinner. What are you going to do? She asked, her eyes searching mine. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to reject him outright. Would you be rejecting him because he's not qualified or because of your history? I sighed. He's qualified. Very qualified. Then you know what the right thing to do is, she said gently. But whatever you decide, I support you. The next morning, I made my decision. I added Derek's name to the interview list. Our HR policy required that at least 2 people conduct interviews, so I asked Jerome, our CTO, to join me. I didn't tell him about my history with Derek. A week later, I sat in our glass-walled conference room, watching as the receptionist led Derek down the hallway. He had aged, of course. His once thick brown hair was receding slightly, and he'd put on weight around the middle, but I'd have recognized him anywhere. As he approached, I took a deep breath. 15 years had passed. I was no longer that scared, skinny kid. I was a successful professional with a loving family and a good life. Whatever happened in the next hour, I reminded myself, I was the one in control. Derek entered the room with confidence, hand extended for a shake. Then his eyes met mine, and I watched as recognition dawned on his face. Gary, he said, his voice a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite identify. The color drained from Derek's face as he stood frozen, hands still extended. Jerome looked between us, sensing the sudden tension. You two know each other? He asked. I cleared my throat. We went to high school together. An understatement of cosmic proportions. Derek lowered his hand slowly, a flicker of panic crossing his features. Gary, let's get started, shall we? I gestured to the chair across from me. This is Jerome, our CTO. We've got about an hour scheduled. Derek sat down mechanically. I could see his mind racing, probably wondering if he should acknowledge our past or pretend it never happened. I maintained a neutral expression, though my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. As we began the interview, Derek struggled to focus. His answers were scattered, lacking the confidence his resume suggested. Jerome shot me confused glances as Derek stumbled through explaining his experience managing cross-functional teams. Could you tell us about a time you faced significant conflict within a team and how you resolved it? I asked, my voice steady. Derek looked directly at me then, perhaps wondering if this was my way of bringing up our history. I believe in addressing conflicts directly, he said cautiously. In my last position, 2 senior developers had fundamentally different approaches to an architecture redesign. As he spoke, memories continued flooding back. The day he'd convinced a girl I liked that I had spread rumors about her. The graduation party I wasn't invited to because he told everyone I was contagious. The daily torment that had me contemplating changing schools. Yet watching him now, nervously adjusting his tie as he answered our questions, he seemed so ordinary. Just a man trying to get a job, not the monster who had lived in my nightmares for years. Halfway through the interview, during Jerome's questions about agile methodologies, Derek stopped mid-sentence. I'm sorry, he said, looking at me. I can't do this. Gary, I know you must hate me. I was horrible to you in high school. Absolutely horrible. If you want me to leave right now, I understand completely. Jerome's eyebrows shot up. He looked at me questioningly. I took a deep breath. Derek and I have some history, I explained to Jerome. It wasn't pleasant. Derek nodded, his face flushed with embarrassment. That's putting it mildly. I was a bully. I made Gary's life miserable for years. He turned back to me. I've actually thought about reaching out to apologize many times, but I figured you wouldn't want to hear from me. And I wouldn't blame you. The conference room fell silent. This wasn't at all what I had expected. I'd imagined Derek would be the same arrogant jerk that he might not even remember what he'd done to me. But here he was, acknowledging it all. Let's take a 5-minute break, I suggested. Jerome nodded and excused himself, clearly wanting to give us space. When we were alone, Derek sighed heavily. I know an apology doesn't undo anything, Gary. But for what it's worth, I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. I was insecure and taking it out on others. It's no excuse, but... He shook his head. I'm just sorry. I sat there, facing my former tormentor, and realized I stood at a crossroads. The path I chose next would say everything about who I had become. Why should I believe you've changed? I asked quietly. It wasn't accusatory. I genuinely wanted to know. Derek ran a hand through his thinning hair. Fair question. About 7 years ago, I hit rock bottom. Lost my job, my fiancée left me. I was drinking too much and alienating everyone around me. He paused. My therapist helped me see I was repeating patterns from my youth, using aggression and intimidation when I felt threatened. I've spent years working on myself since then. I studied his face for signs of deception, but found none. Just a tired man confronting his past mistakes. Do you treat people like that now? I asked. No, he said firmly. But I can't claim to be perfect. I still catch myself sometimes, wanting to dominate conversations, getting defensive. The difference is I recognize it now. Jerome knocked softly before re-entering. Everything okay in here? I nodded. Let's continue. The remainder of the interview was surreal. Derek answered questions with renewed focus, occasionally glancing at me with what seemed like genuine remorse. When we asked about leadership philosophy, his answer surprised me. I believe leadership is about lifting others up, not tearing them down, he said. It took me too long to learn that. True strength comes from supporting your team, not intimidating them. After Jerome asked his final question, I had one more. What would you do if you observed workplace bullying on your team? Derek didn't hesitate. I'd address it immediately. First privately with the individual, making clear such behavior is unacceptable. Then I'd check in with the person being targeted, ensure they feel supported, and follow up to make sure the behavior has stopped. If it continued, I'd involve HR. He met my eyes. I've been on both sides of that equation. I know the damage bullying causes. When the interview concluded, Jerome excused himself to take a call. Derek stood to leave, extending his hand again. Thank you for the opportunity, Gary. Regardless of your decision, I'm glad I had the chance to apologize. I shook his hand. I appreciate your honesty today. After he left, I sat alone in the conference room, processing everything. Jerome returned minutes later. So that was intense. Care to fill me in? I gave him a condensed version of our history. What are you thinking? He asked when I finished. Honestly, I'm conflicted. He seems genuinely remorseful, and his qualifications are strong. But there's too much history for me to be objective. I understand, Jerome nodded. I can handle the hiring decision if you want to recuse yourself. That evening, I discussed everything with May. What would hiring him say about you? She asked. That I'm professional enough to separate past and present. That I believe people can change. And what would rejecting him say? I considered this. That I'm protecting myself from potential discomfort. Or that I'm using my position for revenge. Which feels right to you? She asked. 2 weeks later, Derek started as our new senior project manager. The decision wasn't about forgiveness. That would take time. It was about being the kind of leader I wished I'd had in my life during those dark high school days. Derek has excelled in his role. We maintain a professional relationship, though we've never discussed our past again. Sometimes I catch him looking at me with what seems like gratitude, and I nod in acknowledgement. My revenge, if you can call it that, was refusing to let our shared history define either of us. By giving Derek a second chance, I freed myself from the last chains of victimhood. And in doing so, I discovered something unexpected. Moving forward feels infinitely better than getting even.